Hi, my name is Yasmine Khater, and I have a father. My name is Yasmine, and I run YasmineKhater.com. So basically what we do is we help empire builders grow their businesses. And the biggest thing that we see when it comes to our customers is generally it's a fearless mindset. Because many of the times when it comes to growing a business, there's a lot of uncertainty there. And that actually comes, again, from your father and how you deal with trust and how you deal with the early relationships in your life. And that also influences how you see the world. And from there, beyond the mindset, we take them through the practical stuff. So we help them develop airtight systems and marketing and sales funnels that actually helps them convert and create a process that actually gets them more people in the door. And we also help them develop a much more strong and robust marketing and sales strategy for them to consistently grow their empire and grow their impact that they want to create in the world. My father was pretty awesome. He was a very strong and silent type, but he was also quite sarcastic. So always making jokes and always teasing and always being really funny. And I was very blessed. He loved us very, very, very much. He wasn't verbal about expressing his love, but he was always doing things to show his love. And just an amazing character of a man.
And your relationship with him?
When I was younger, I was always trying to prove to him that I was an adult. And looking back, I did some really stupid stuff. Like, I was like, always trying to justify that why I was an adult. And like, I even one time like emailed him my resume so he could take me more seriously. And like, oh yeah, I'm an older person. And I was 17. I was like, obviously not an adult. But in my mind, I was like, treat me like an adult, not like a child. But I guess like now that I'm older, I kind of think that no matter what age, we're always going to be our parents' babies. And it's actually kind of beautiful because it's a way of them being caring and loving and expressing. And it's just about us starting to accept it and embrace it just the way it is, without judging it, without anything else, and just thinking that everyone is different. And when my dad, he passed away, but when he was diagnosed with cancer, I was really angry because I wanted him to become more verbal with his emotions, because I'm quite verbal, with my emotions. And my mom said something that was really interesting. She said, "How old is your dad?" I'm like, 55. It's like, is he going to change? And I realized that he probably wasn't going to change. And if I wanted something to change, then I would have to change how I saw the relationship. And that was, for me, just interesting, that actually everything is what it is depending on how we see it. And it is not what it is depending also on how we see it. So everything just depends on how we see it. So a lot of studies that actually show that if a father is very encouraging and very supporting and very loving, that their daughters become much more confident. And I think he's always influenced us by not really pushing us to be the best at school, because he wasn't the best at school, but really taking something that you love to do and going further at that. And he always really encouraged us. And we could see, like, he was an architect and he loved being an architect. Like, he may not have been the best one in school, but because he loves it so much, he grew his business quite big because he loved being an architect. Like, nobody forced him, but he just loved it. And I think that's something that, like, is very important for me, is constantly being satisfied by the work that you do and being proud of it. So I remember even as a kid, like, he would make us come to his houses that he would build, and he would have such pride because obviously building a house takes a very long time, but the whole concept of creation from nothing into seeing this like structural, foundational product of a building. And I think it's just always realizing that take things that you want very seriously and do them as well as you can. And I think also always just like realizing that there's no perfection. It's just that we are just products of becoming perfection, and we have many beta versions before we become perfect. And seeing him do the same work over and over again until he found that perfect house or that perfect angle, the perfect way the room should be done, it was an interesting way of learning also those things. He taught me so much about life and about business, even though he's not here. It's really amazing that I look back at things that he used to do, just his character, and I'd be like, wow, that was really, I never thought it like that before, but he just always is teaching me. And he's just been fantastic. I think he was just really supportive. That was the bottom line. Like, he never judged, and he never, like, I look at some of my friends and their parents are really hard on their grades, and my parents, including my mom as well, they never judged. They just were very accepting. Whatever we had, like a passion or an interest, he would really encourage it. So he was always saying, if you want to do something, you have to go and learn it. And they would make the opportunities available for us to do that. So I wanted to paint, and he's like always giving me compliments and saying, you're going to be a famous painter. And just because I wanted to paint, I didn't have to become a famous painter. I just like to paint. But he was just making me always feel like, oh yeah, eventually I can. So I think my attitude of like, I may not be the expert yet, but I'm always going to be becoming one, is something that he always taught us, because he just always made us feel that the fact that you already started, you means you're actually on the way to becoming an expert at something. And that's just amazing. Yeah, so again, he wasn't a very verbal kind of guy, but he's the kind of guy who, like, him spending time and sitting with you is actually all that he wants. And kind of learning about love can be expressed in different ways. It doesn't have to be always just through verbal. And he's also, like, now that I know about the languages of love and how love can be expressed in different ways, he really has an act of giving, and that was the most important thing for him. And when he was younger, he always wanted to have certain things in life, and predominantly it was a better education. He had a good education, but he wanted a better one. So for him, it was very important to send us to very good schools, send us to very good universities, because for him it was actually like his act of love. Because so my father's father, also back to fathers, would always say that I can leave you with money, it can be spent. I can leave you with property, it can be lost. I can leave you with education, and it'll always be your friend. And that was like his way of showing us that he loved us, was by constantly investing in, looking back at it, really expensive schools, like not cheap ones, because that's how he loved us. Because he saw that that was the biggest investment in us. And now that I'm looking back, I'm very blessed, because that has been the best investment in us that he's ever could have done. So I think life is quite funny. So when I was a kid, my mom used to always drag us to go and volunteer with the children in cancer hospital. And I was like 13, 14. And at the time, I was like, what's wrong with my mother? Why is she making us suffer and come to this place? And all these kids are sick and they're actually going to die. But it's actually, maybe it's part of God's plan in terms of us becoming more comfortable with that. So I guess it was probably my third year of university, he was diagnosed with 4-stage cancer. And that sucked, because even when we asked, like, can he be fit, can he be healed, can he, do better, the fact that he had spread so much and no one could actually catch it meant that it couldn't. And it's a curse, but it's also a blessing in a weird kind of way. Now that I'm looking back, it's all blessings, but at the time, it really, really sucked. It's a blessing because we got to say goodbye to him. Like, we had time to say goodbye with him. So for the last year of his life, I literally spent so much more time that I could have spent in my life, because he became the number one priority. And when we were kids, he would always joke that having children was a very important ROI. The ROI would be when you're sick and when you're old, they take care of you. So ROI, if you don't know, is actually the return on investment. And I'm always like, when I was in college, I was like always laughing, how ridiculous. But when he was sick, he got his ROI. All he wanted to have was for us to be around him, and for us to be supportive, and for us to just spend time with him. And that was kind of a blessing. And I know, I look back, and the first couple of years, every time I talk about him, I would cry. But now I talk about him and I smile, because he's still here. He's not here physically, but he's still here emotionally. He's part of who I am as an individual. He's part of who my brothers are. He's part of every one of us that I see around me. And everything he's taught has been still here. And in terms of integrity, in terms of values, in terms of, just giving it your best and accepting it for what it is and making time for the people who matter, it's just part of who I am, and I'm blessed to be his daughter and his child. I think if I had to explain it, I would talk about it still from a very feminine perspective, because father's loves are important for both children, both women, guys and girls, but for me, as a daughter, it's the first man that you see in this world, the first interaction you have with a man. And the way he treats you is the way you think all men are going to treat you. So when I think about my father, he just really built a lot of confidence in me. He let me know that everything was possible, and I think for most fathers, you need to realize that you are that foundational block for your daughter. Not only for today, but for the rest of her life. And you need to make her feel safe and supported. Because life already as it is very tough, and as parents, that's all you have to do for your children, make them feel loved and supported. And even more if you have a daughter. Because that will have a huge impact in how she perceives herself, and her self-image, and her self-love, and also how she perceives the world as well. I mean, sometimes I meet people who, you know, they don't talk to their dads, they don't speak to their dads, and they say their dads are assholes and everything. And I always feel such sadness when I hear that kind of stuff, because our parents are not perfect. Because, hey, they're people. And if we have children, or if you have children right now, you're gonna mess up as well, just because you don't have your shit together. So it's kind of like you're figuring out as it comes along. But the saddest part is we also can teach our parents something, and we can teach our father something. And it's really important to realize that we also have a part in their learning as well. So be patient and be open, and even if they're assholes, you don't have to talk to them every day, but they have come to something that's very important. And the truth of the matter is, if you don't resolve those issues you have with your parents, it's going to impact the rest of your life, because every relationship moving forward is impacted by the ones you have of your father and your mother. So if you hate your father or your mother, it's going to also come back into the partner you end up having, how you raise your children, even how you interact at the workplace, or even how you run your own business. Because those are basic relationships around trust. And that's something that's really important to realize, that even if they're a douchebag, if they were to die tomorrow, what would you tell that douchebag? Because once someone is gone, they don't come back. And that's the reality. So be patient, and they don't have to be your best friend, but just think, if they weren't here, would you feel upset about it? And many of the times, unless they were horrible and they did really horrible things to you, you will feel a bit upset about it. I know, so in case you're not really sure how to approach your fathers, for me it's always important, like, just think that they're a lot older than you, and the chances are the stuff that they've been exposed to and their lens of how they see the world is different than the way you see the world. So when you're coming to talk to your parents, don't get upset at them, because they see the world differently, like literally in a whole different lens. And if you have to use the experiment of having two people in different lens, let's say for example our world is green and their world is blue, and we try to understand the same things that look exactly the same, but they're not the same things. So be patient with that, because our world is really evolved since their world, and that has a huge impact on how they perceive things as well. And when it comes to communication, realize that there is an age gap, and when it comes to age, and even comes to like social context, the associations we have with words mean very, very different things. So if you feel like you're not getting the right point across, then try to approach it a different way. Try to ask them, hey, what did you think I just said? And ask them these questions, because sometimes you're saying something and they're hearing a different thing, and that comes down for basic communication and trust, which is something that a lot of people struggle with, not only just you, but myself included, that it's something that's a lifelong journey. Communication is some really hard stuff, because it depends on how open you are to actually telling them how you really feel. Most people are scared to do that, because it's hard. This has been Yasmine Khater, and I wanted to wish you Happy Father's Day.